When a bomber crew took off during World War II, they weren't just flying into enemy fire. They were leaving behind every hospital, medic and safety net that could have saved their lives. Once in the air, thousands of feet above freezing skies and flak bursts, the only thing standing between a wounded airman and death was a small canvas pouch tucked inside the aircraft. The Aircrew Medic Kit. This wasn't the standard infantry first aid pack. It was a specialized survival system designed for life and death in the skies, something most soldiers on the ground never even knew existed. The medic kit was built for a war fought in the air, not the trenches. Unlike the bulky medic satchels used by infantry corpsmen, the aircrew kit had to be light, compact and usable in tight quarters. Inside a B-17 or Lancaster bomber, space was precious. Every ounce counted against fuel and payload, so the medics and engineers had to design something small enough to stow behind the navigator's seat, but complete enough to treat shrapnel wounds, burns, frostbite and shock. A standard World War II aircrew first aid kit typically contained media group, close-up of WWII morphine syrettes inside aircrew first aid kit, selection of morphine syrettes from WWII stock were distribute, equally morphine syrettes for pain relief, sulfa powder to prevent infection, morphine dosage tags to prevent overdosing, bandages, adhesive plasters and tourniquets. But that was only part of it. Advanced versions, especially in British and American bombers, also included media group, WWII morphine auto-injectors and adrenaline ampules in aircrew kit, iodine swabs and quinine tablets in British or American bomber first aid kit stock, distribute equally morphine auto-injectors, ampules of adrenaline, iodine swabs, quinine tablets for fever, and morphine substitutes like codeine phosphate for crews who had run out of the stronger stuff. Every vial and dressing had to survive freezing temperatures and pressure drops at 25,000 feet, so they were sealed in waxed packets and tins to stay sterile. What made the aircrew kit unique wasn't just its contents, it was its context. A medic couldn't walk over mid-air. Crews had to be their own doctors. That's why flight surgeons gave every bomber group short but intense crash courses on trauma control. How to apply a tourniquet to a leg shredded by shrapnel. How to inject morphine without passing out yourself. And how to keep someone alive until the plane limped back to base. Morphine and sulfa were the real lifelines of air survival. Morphine was a controlled substance even then, but in aerial combat it was essential. A small metal syrette, a single-use morphine injector, could stop shock in seconds and keep a wounded man conscious. These were stored in an aluminum tube marked with red paint so they could be found instantly in the chaos. The dosage tag tied to the airman's collar after injection prevented a fatal second dose from being given later on. Sulfa, on the other hand, was the unsung hero. Long before penicillin reached mass production, sulfa powder was the frontline antibiotic of World War II. Crews sprinkled it directly into wounds to stop infection, which was especially vital in air missions over salt water or enemy territory, where evacuation was impossible. Many veterans credited sulfa with saving more lives than morphine, because infection often killed days after the injury. You know, even in modern survival training, the principle still applies. Infection prevention comes before pain control. Outdoor medics today can actually replicate this logic with antiseptic sprays or even powdered antibiotics when medical access is delayed. Frostbite, burns and oxygen deprivation were constant threats. Flying at 20,000 feet in unpressurized bombers meant temperatures could drop to -40 degrees. Frostbite was a silent killer, and the medic kit reflected that. It included lanolin ointment to treat frozen skin and glycerin-based creams to protect exposed hands and faces. In emergencies, melted paraffin or even engine oil was used to seal cracked skin and prevent infection when supplies ran out. For burns caused by flak or electrical shorts, the kits contained tannic acid jelly or petroleum gauze. Pilots and gunners frequently suffered facial burns from gun turrets or oxygen fires. The burn dressings were designed to cool the wound and form a film that hardened into a protective layer until medical help was available. Modern outdoor enthusiasts can, I think, take a lesson from this. Always pack dual-purpose balms that handle both cold exposure and burns. A small tin of lanolin-based ointment can save skin on a winter trek as effectively as it did over Europe 80 years ago. Quinine and adrenaline were, the invisible powerhouses of the kit. WWII flight medics knew that shock and fever could kill just as fast as shrapnel. Quinine tablets were included to control fever from infection or malaria during tropical missions. Adrenaline ampules were reserved for severe allergic reactions or to restart the heart after shock. They were tiny glass vials meant to be cracked open and injected into the thigh. Primitive by modern standards, but effective enough to revive fainting or unconscious crew members. While, honestly, few civilians carry adrenaline ampules today, the survival mindset remains relevant. Whether it's keeping an EpiPen for allergic reactions or oral glucose for faintness, the core principle from WWII still stands: small, lightweight interventions save lives when professional help is far away. Every aircrew member was trained to be their own medic. Before missions, crews received a briefing from a flight surgeon on the medic kit's contents. Each airman was responsible for knowing how to use it because, well, in combat there might be no one else conscious to help. One of the most valuable lessons was improvisation. You see, tourniquets could be made from headset cords, morphine could be warmed under armpits before injecting in sub-zero air, and bandages could be fashioned from parachute silk if supplies ran out. This improvisational training carried into post-war survival manuals and SEER, or survival, evasion, resistance, escape doctrine, that modern pilots still study today. It emphasized adaptability, the ability to turn whatever's around you into a tool for survival. What we can still learn from the forgotten medic kits of the skies. The World War II Aircrew Medic Kit wasn't just a piece of equipment, it was a philosophy. It proved that survival depended on preparation, not luck. Those small tins and ampules represented foresight in a world where medical help was hours or days away. For modern preppers, survivalists, and even field medics, that same principle still holds true. Compact, durable, and multi-purpose medical supplies can mean the difference between life and death in isolation. Building a personal emergency kit today, using that World War II logic, means focusing on essentials: pain control, infection prevention, and shock management. It's not about quantity, but quality. just as it was for those crews who carried everything they needed in a pouch no bigger than a lunchbox. The World War II Aircrew Medic Kit remains one of the least discussed yet most fascinating pieces of survival gear ever issued. It carried the distilled knowledge of field medicine, chemistry and human endurance at a time when technology couldn't save you if your plane went down. If this deep dive gave you new respect for the forgotten survival gear of the air war, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom for more untold stories and field-tested lessons from history's toughest survivors. And, share this video so others can see how much we can still learn from the ingenuity of the past.